Hello and welcome to another pattern recognition video featuring simplification patterns in which you trade down into a winning game by simplifying, trading off pieces and going for the win with more material usually. So let's see how you do that. I'm going to try and do at least 10 puzzles. And the idea with pattern recognition is to just solve a bunch of puzzles and do them more than once so you remember them better than if you just do the problem once. Now, I had a viewer ask about trying to solve these puzzles on chess.com, but when they clicked into puzzles, they were stuck with a harder puzzle, 2400. And if you're working on pattern recognition, you want something lower rated that's easier. That way, you're just working on simple basics instead of a harder puzzle that you have to calculate and think a lot harder on. So, how would you go to simple, easier problems? Well, you can just go to the puzzles section and then pick custom puzzles and pick the type of puzzle you want to do or work on, and you can set the rating level. So today I set the rating at 1000 to 1500. Hopefully that won't be too difficult for beginners, but let's see how you do here. So in this position, black just moved a bishop, unleashing a discovered attack on our queen. Now, we could go ahead, maybe pick off this knight. That's an option. It gets the queen to safety. But if we really want to simplify things down, the first thing you want to do is look at the material to begin with and see if you start trading, make sure you're going to be ahead in material. Pawns, we have 5 black pawns, 5 white pawns. We both have 3 minor pieces, 2 rooks, and a queen. So the more pieces we can trade down, the better off we'll be. So I think we should just probably get rid of the rook and the queen here. We could go here. So, that's looking pretty good. We capture that rook. Now, I had a viewer say that I should do a script. That way it helps me stop saying and too much. I'll try to avoid doing that too often. But I don't know if I can do a script here because I'm picking problems that I haven't seen before. So I kind of have to talk about it on the fly. So capture. Then the option is for the king to run. But then we can just pick off the queen. So we'll probably have capture, queen captures, rook captures, king captures. And now we have an option of what to do. It looks like the best thing would be to just pick off this piece and we'd end up ahead a minor piece after that. So capture, capture, and we grab the minor piece. And now we have 3 minor pieces versus their 2, and that extra piece should be enough to win the game for us. All right, I'll try and do 9 more of these. And hopefully you can follow along. Pause at any time. As always, if you want to think longer. Remember, once you look at the position, look at checks, captures, and threats in that order. Checks first because they're most forcing. So what do we have here? We had checked the king. The king runs. And now we have a few options. We could start attacking the king. If we go here, the king will run. But then do we have a good follow-up? If the king runs here, we could attack again. Oh, wow. Then the king would have to run here, and we could pick off this rook. Then what does the king do? The king would have to run, we could attack again. That's looking pretty good for us. But like I said, we should look at all the material first before we start going crazy. So pawns, we have what? 3, 4, 5, 7 pawns versus 5. So we're ahead by 2 pawns, but we're down by a bishop. So 2 pawns for a bishop, we're actually behind. So being behind in material, we need to figure out a way to get back some material before we start trading down. So that might mean it's a good idea to go ahead and attack that king. You know, we're checking it here. It can only run here. Then we move here, forking the king and the rook. And are there any other good options after that? That's probably the best way to go, I'm thinking. But I should take a look. I mean, when you think you found the best move, stop for a minute, see if you can find anything better. If we take the queen, trading down, our opponent would most likely capture. Then what do? If we push this pawn to check the king, he can step in front of the pawn. Our other pawn could swing up there. So, okay, let's look at this. Capture, capture. We push forward with check, but the queening square is kind of covered by rook and bishop and the king once the king steps up. So maybe the attack is better. But one thing we have to watch out for is once we move our queen, if our opponent gets a chance to go here, you know, capturing, if the queen can capture that pawn, it'll be checkmate because of this bishop here, preventing the king from running. So we have to make sure that this works. Check. The only thing that can be done when a king is under attack, there are 3 options. Capture the attacker, block the attacker, or run. So the queen cannot be captured here. There's nothing that can block. The only thing can be done is for the king to run. Then, if we move up here, attacking the king again, he can only run to here. Now we can pick this off with check. The bishop could block. That would give our king a little bit of breathing room. So instead, well, that's the only good option, is for the bishop to block. All right, so this one's a little bit tricky, and maybe I should have kept the rating at 500 to 1,000 instead of 1,000 to 1,500. But for the more advanced players, you know, let me know in the comments at any time if you need harder problems or if you want easier ones. So once again, attack. King has to go here. We check. The king will be forced to go here. We can take the rook, go ahead in material. The bishop will block. Then we can check with the pawn. I think that'll work. We'll have the king running so much that I apologize, there's another but the king will be running so much he won't be able to get, the opponent won't be able to get in his attack by going here. So now we should just go ahead and capture. And what can be done here? Well, the bishop would have to block. Then we do have this option of going here. And if the king tries to run away, we can pick off the bishop with check. If the king steps down here, we could drop our queen back and check, forking the king and queen and trading material. All right, well, let's move on to the next one. I don't want to take too much time all on one problem. So white has just pressed forward, trying to move his pawn majority over here on the king side down the board. You know, he could push here, perhaps. Although, if he does that, we could capture. He captures, then our queen could capture. But then the knight would be picked off. But it's our turn to move. So we want to look for checks, captures, and threats in that order. Checks first. Do we have any good checks? Well, we have a possible check here. Whether it's good or not, I don't know. Because the knight could just pick that off. Then the pawn lands there. Excuse me. Let's take a look at this. Knight delivers check. And the king, I mean, they don't have to take the knight, but that might be best. So knight checks. The knight could capture. Then the pawn captures. Then the queen captures. Then what? We take the bishop. Then if the queen takes the bishop. Oh, but by then, okay, I think that would work. Okay, another tricky one here. A lot going on. So, I mean, we don't have to check. We could go here, but then the bishop could recapture, pinning the knight. That doesn't look so good. So maybe we go there. Check. And if the king moves, then we can capture the knight. Bishop captures. Knight captures. Rook captures. And then the queen captures, coming out ahead. A lot going on, I know. So let me know in the comments if these puzzles are too complicated for the viewers out there. I mean, I don't know what your level is. If you're a beginner, this might be a little more difficult. So check. Knight captures. Maybe we go after this first. Then the queen would capture. Then we take. All right, I'm just going to go ahead with it. So, nope, they do not want that problem. Okay, so now we have to look at things differently. If we take the bishop, the pawn could capture. Then our queen will come under attack. All right, so the other option is to capture. If the bishop captures, we can go here. Oh, okay, that's what they want. All right. So then we go here with check, and it allows us to capture. You know, and then if the rook captures, we just recapture. So we're ahead a piece. All right, so maybe that was a 1480 rated one. So maybe that puzzle was a little more difficult for pattern recognition because we had to do more calculation there. So let's do the next problem, see how it turns out. The knight was attacking the king with check. Instead of capturing with the pawn, the king steps forward. The obvious move now would be just to take the rook with a check. So why was that? Oh, they didn't capture with the pawn because of the pawn was pinned to this rook. Well, now the obvious move is to just go ahead and take that rook unless there's some problem or reason why not to do that. All right, it delivers a check, so our opponent would have to respond to that. If the king went after the knight, well, then our queen could capture here. Also, if we want to look at checks first, we could go here, rook captures, queen captures, and that would lead to a mate. So maybe that's a better way to go. But if we go here, the king could move. I think that might be better to just go ahead and do that. Yeah, now this leads to a mate. So, all right. Well, hopefully you found that one. On to the next one. We're almost halfway done. Knight drops back, attacking, forking knight, but also forking, the rook as well. Okay. Well, let's look at checks first. Do we have anything here? Kind of a closed, complicated position. The king is a little trapped in here, but we have to worry about this. Okay, before we continue, let's look at material. We have 1, 2, 3, 5, 7 pawns versus 7. Rooks and queens. And 2 knights versus knight and bishop. So material is even. So we want to trade down and go into some type of winning endgame. How can we do that? Oh, look at the checks first. Very important. Okay. If we look at the checks first, do we have a sacrifice? Maybe we could go here. If the pawn captures, the other rook captures. But the king can escape up to there. And then what do we do? Oh, wow. Okay, let's look at this. Yeah, I think this might be a little bit too much calculation for pattern recognition problems. So I'll have to remember to keep these a little less difficult, maybe in the next video. So capture, capture, capture with check, forcing the king to go here. And now, if our queen moves to there, We're threatening to swing our rook over and deliver a mate. All right, another tricky one. Now, is there something I'm missing here? Um, hmm. Well, I don't know. I'm thinking that rook sacrifice works. All right, time is wasting, so let's go ahead and do it. Now I think we bring the queen in unless there's a better move. I mean, this is what I was thinking. Bring the queen up to here, and then we're threatening to just mate right here. But what can our opponent do in the meantime? Move the queen out for an escape route. That's a possibility. Oh, but if the queen moves, it would have to move here. Yeah, it has to guard from the mate. All right, so we go there. Oh, that's interesting. A nice little fork. Hmm. All right, and this is another reason, a perfect example of making sure you look for checks, by your opponent as well. So, huh. We probably have to take that knight. If we don't, they'll grab our queen. Okay. So now hmm. I don't know. This is kind of a tricky one. So, how would you continue here? I mean, you still have the threat of bringing this up and over. What if they attack us in the meantime with their rook? But if we look at material, at this point, we are behind in material, or are we? We have 3 pawns. So I guess we are ahead in material already. We're down a rook, but we have a bishop and 3 pawns. So that's actually a little stronger than the rook. All right, let's move on here to the final problems. Here we go. We have 5 more to do. So the pawn is just pushed forward. What can we do now? Uh, hmm. Okay. White has pushed a pawn forward. Now, the king is really trapped in here, so that can be a problem. We could just push forward and then threaten to mate. Now we can't do that because we would be pinned, our pawn would be pinned by this rook, but that would give us the opportunity to move the rook and threaten promotion. And then if this pawn were to be captured, then we could deliver the mate. But in the meantime, we have to figure out what our opponent might do. So if we go here, a pawn could be pushed forward. All right. But then if we capture, the issue is we're going to be able to swing over and check the opponent's king, perhaps, depending where that, if that king becomes open, we can check, giving us time to promote our pawn. So Here we go. All right, now we can just go ahead and capture, I think, unless there is anything else. Okay, so this is what I was talking about. We can check. The king will have to move, and then we can push our pawn, and our opponent will have to give up his rook there. All right, 4 more to go. I hope you're doing well on these. Okay, our queen was checking the king, so it ran into the corner. Okay, now I had a previous video talking about weak squares and outposts, and this is a perfect example. This weak square here in black's position allows the knight to just sit here on this outpost on e5, and it can't be chased away or attacked by any pawns. Now, we have to act immediately here because there is a threat of check. The only way to stop that would be to block, and then the queen would be captured with mate. So we need to act immediately by getting a check in first. But how would be the best way to do that? All right. Look at all checks. Now, probably the knight is going to be the best check. We have to just figure out where, here or here. If our queen goes up here, they'll just take it, so that's not looking too good. If we go here, pawn would capture. The king has an escape hatch. And then what? It's not looking good. So here, we check. If the rook captures, well then our rook can capture with check. The rook can only block, and then we capture, delivering a mate. So the other option takes black into a very famous type of checkmate. Let's see if it works. If we go here, the king steps over to help attack the knight. Well, now we can use a discovered attack. And I think that works. Okay, so check out this. Now, this is a great pattern to know. I was able to use it before in a game. Sometimes it's a lot harder to set up, but you never know. If you get a chance to unleash this pattern on somebody, it's pretty awesome. So here we go. All right, they fall into the pattern. We do a double discovered check here, checking with the knight and the queen at the same time. And now we can sacrifice the queen here. And because the knight was protecting that queen, the rook capture was the only thing possible. And then we deliver the mate, a smothered mate here. So that was a pretty awesome pattern. Okay, we have 3 more. I hope you did well on that one. What is happening here? Knight has developed out to c6. Now, we're trying to simplify down, unless there's a way to checkmate, but I don't see any checkmates. All our pieces are on the other side of the board. None of them are up here next to the king. If we look at material, we have 6 pawns versus 7. So we're behind by a pawn, and all the other material is even. So we're just down. We're down by a pawn. Okay. So we need to find a way to gain an advantage. Can we trap the queen? You know, that might be something to look at. If we go here, where could that queen go? The queen could retreat, possibly. But if it doesn't, if it takes the pawn, then we bring the other rook over, trapping the queen. The queen would be in trouble there. So if we attack and they take this poisoned pawn here, it would be bad. So instead, attack. The queen should retreat. The only place the queen can retreat to would be where? Here. Now, is there a way to take advantage of that? We could attack the queen again with our rook. No, because the knight would capture. So maybe we have another way to trap this queen. All right, this is where it's just getting crazy into a lot of complications and calculation. We push a pawn, attacking the queen. Now the queen could go here. If the queen retreats back, we'll fork a piece. So I think that's the way to go, to target this queen. All right, now we just trap the queen. And it has to force, or it's forced to take here. So now we're just ahead. So I don't know, that was more of a trapping of a piece pattern, you know, instead of, but it did simplify down to a winning endgame. All right, we have 2 more to go. Let's finish this out. Oh, this is dangerous. We have the threat of mate in 1 here. How do we even deal with that? Okay. Well, when there's no way to stop incoming checkmate, the only thing we can do is try to mate the opponent. So do we have a mate? Look at checks first, as they are the most forcing, and any checks. Looks like we do have a check. Capture with the queen. The only move available is for the king to go here, and then we can deliver a mate. So capture and mate. So, all right, well, I guess we had a checkmate, in 2 thrown into the mix of these simplification patterns. On to the next one. Oh, maybe I forgot to remove the knight outpost. I think that's what happened. I forgot to remove the knight outpost patterns. So they're mixed in. That's what's happening. The knight outpost patterns, which I did in a previous video, are mixed in with the simplification videos. Okay. Here we go. This is another knight outpost one, so I apologize for that mix-up. These are not only simplification videos. All right, what do we have here? The knight's attacking our queen. So maybe we should knock that knight out of there. Let's look at material. We have 4, 5, 6, 7 pawns versus 7. 3 minor pieces. So it's pretty even. We just need to knock that knight out of there. We could chase the knight back with e6, but then he could either, oh no, we can't do that. He'll capture our queen. What am I thinking? So we're pretty much forced to knock that knight out of there, I think. Unless there's a better counterattack, which I don't see. So we're just going to knock that out of there, I think. Then he can capture with the bishop or the pawn, probably capturing with the pawn towards the center. Maybe that's a better move. Okay. We may have an option. No. Okay, I think we have to do this. And then we're going to go ahead and material. We're going to knock this knight out of here. He'll capture with the pawn or the bishop, probably the pawn. Then we can move up here, attacking the bishop, and it'll be trapped. Because then our bishop will be covering that square. There's no way to protect that bishop. All right, here we go. Capture, and now we go after the bishop. So if the bishop is going down, you might as well take a piece with you or a pawn, whatever you can get. So now we just capture here. All right. Well, I apologize for not all of these being simplification problems. That's what I was talking about. You can go in chess.com and choose what type of puzzles you want to do. And I must have clicked on Knight Outpost for my previous video, or one of my previous videos, and forgot to unclick it. So this was a mix of simplification patterns and the Knight Outpost patterns. All right. Feel free to leave comments. Let me know if some of these were a little too difficult. Do you want easier problems? Which the easier ones probably are a little bit better if you're working on pattern recognition, because as I mentioned before, once they become more difficult, then you're working on calculation ability a little bit more. Anyway, feel free to leave comments, like and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you for watching, and have a super chess day.